Would you rather have invisibility or the ability to read minds?
Invisibility.
Read minds.
Why?
Bro, you'd be a step ahead of everybody. Reading their minds, you know exactly what they're thinking.
I have no desire. I have no desire to know what people are
I don't
thinking.
want to know what's in your head.
It's this. Ching, ching, ching.
My villagers need me, guys. Okay.
No, I'd go invisibility, man. One, you could be the best spy in the world.
But think it's kind of the same, in a way. Invisibility, you can hear. You're not reading people's minds, but you're hearing what they're saying behind closed doors. What's going on inside their mind?
What?
What they're not saying in front of you, it's in their mind. It'll come out eventually somewhere. You can be invisible and spying on them. They don't even know.
No, I'm thinking more of like a military aspect, or like if I need to get out of a place, like boom, and I just walk away and I'm out.
Does invisibility make you invisible to thermal? It doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't know. I don't have very much.
I mean, bro, I'll just go Rambo, and cover myself with mud, and I don't. It's thermal.
That was.
Was it? Oh no, that was
Predator or Alien versus.
That's right. But is it one of those things like you can always constantly hear someone? Or is it just like you get to choose who you're listening to?
One moment, I'm doing it right now.
What's going on in my head right now?
You're an idiot. That's what you're saying. You're saying, Zach, you're so dumb. Listen, you can turn it on and off. You have to be able to. If it's a constant noise, if it's a constant, I can't do that then. I'd choose invisibility. If I can turn it on and off, like when I want to read people's minds, then I'll use it. I choose that.
You can turn off invisibility.
So I should be able to turn it on.
Okay.
All right. So
Makes sense.
I would choose mind reading. Because then when I'm teaching, no, never mind.
You're wrong, but anyway.
Yeah.
Just gonna let you know you are wrong.
100% invisibility.
But then I could know which direction you're coming from if you're invisible, because I could read your mind and I know where you are.
But would you have to pinpoint me?
No, I mean you just be like, all right, who?
You could switch on and say, I want to listen to Elijah.
Okay.
That's weird.
I mean, it's kind of like Professor X, right? He locate people through their minds.
What type of invisibility is this? Like,
There's different levels to this.
well, is it just like you or anything you're holding too?
Mm.
Because like if you can't bring anything with you when you're invisible,
It means you're running around naked.
Yeah, we're gonna have to cut this. A lot of editing's gonna be done for you, Trevor, on this side.
Well, I mean, your clothes can't go invisible. That's like you holding it.
well, let's say your clothes can, but like, can you take stuff with you? Like, can your phone come with you? Can a camera come with you? Like,
If you
can
touch it,
record
it
stuff?
becomes invisible.
Okay. Oh, that's really awesome.
That's pretty powerful.
Bro, I'm about to be an arms dealer.
I haven't seen anything yet anywhere.
Yeah. Dude, you could go, man, just think of the rescue missions you could do.
Here's your thumbnail right there.
Anyways, welcome to the Road Student Podcast. So we just finished week 4 in James. And we've just been doing just a section from each chapter. Each week we've done it. And so this week we're in James chapter 4, talking through verse 7 through 10. And what's funny is Zach and I had different, like what's cool is like if you are sticking with the Bible and sticking with the scripture, like you're going to have the similar points. Overall the same like main idea, because you gotta stick close to what scripture is saying. And so in context, like James is talking about like, hey, y'all shouldn't be fighting. You know, at the beginning of chapter 4 talks about here's the reason why you fight, right? Because of the evil inside of us, the lust we have, the envy that we have, causes us to commit sin and causes us to fight. And one of the first questions I asked our students, I said, how many of y'all ever think you're the problem for your fights? No one answered. No one raised their hands. because we never think of like ourselves as being the issue, right? It's always someone else. They're the reason why we're having an issue. But in reality, it is our own selfishness and desires that we have that causes us to fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then I went in, and James 7-10 is basically teaching us, like, this is how you avoid quarrels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Avoid that fighting. Here's some different steps that we have. So, but
yeah, that's good. Yeah, we're in the office, and I asked Elijah, I was like, what's your lesson like? What's your lesson look like? And he said it, and I was like, yeah, I want to live a different direction than you. So I added a little twist to mine where I was like, we went different routes, but we came to the same exit, same location. The biggest thing I keyed in on was submission, and that, like, how do we have a healthy relationship with God so that we can have a healthy relationship with other people? I told him, I was like, with my friends and even myself, is whenever I'm kind of treating people badly or being rude, like you can tell that my relationship, it's a direct result of how healthy my relationship with God is at that time. So if I'm really, really nice to people, I'm caring for people, I'm selflessly loving people, I'm like, yeah, man, your relationship with God's good. You've been in the Bible, you've been praying. Man, if you're kind of just cranky and you're just like always just kind of, right? I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but I don't know if that's the right way to describe it. But you can tell that something's wrong with the relationship with God at the moment. It's not where it should be health-wise, right? Because they haven't been in the Word or been in good community or whatever the case might be. And so this idea of submitting to God really helps us understand, like, how we live at peace with people, right? Because you look at this tier of Christianity, it's like God is over everything. And then, like, also in Ephesians 5, it talks about submission. It says we should submit to each other, right? So we can look out for each other and care for each other, right? But if you don't know how to submit to God, if you master submitting to God, submitting to other people is going to be a lot easier for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I talked about how I struggle with submitting to people. I struggle when someone's trying to tell me what to do because I've got to have a reason. Like, it needs to be a good enough reason for me to follow a rule. And other people better be following this rule, or else I'm definitely not going to follow this rule, because that drives me crazy too. But basically, I talked about how, we can trust submitting to God. Like, we all struggle to submit, but we submit to something, right? It's either going to be God or it's going to be to sin. And it's how I pulled together resist the devil as well. But we can trust God because he's not a flawed man, right? He's not a tyrannical king. We can trust in his commands, even if they don't make much sense to us right now. As we mature spiritually, it will begin to make more sense as we get older. But yeah, we can trust him because he created all things. He loves us, and so he is trustworthy and worthy to submit to.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't put that in mind, but that's awesome. But this act of submission, I think what we got to understand is it's an action and commitment on our part, right? That requires us to do something.
Be humble.
Yeah, to be humble, right? And that's the thing, is that we don't realize sometimes. I think that a lot, and I told this to the high schoolers, I was like, I think we have this misunderstanding about what it means to follow God, or what happens after. Right? We think that he comes along and swipes away everything hard in our life, and swipes away all the sins in our life once we submit to God. But I was like, no, that's not it. Like, you have to daily make the decision to submit your struggles to God, but also submit yourself to other people to honor God, right? And I think a lot of times we don't think about it like that there's action. Like you talked about the drawing near and the resisting, right? It says draw near to, resist the devil and he will flee from you. Draw near to God and he will draw near to you. Both those things are talking about us having an action required, right? They're both verbs, resisting and drawing. And so there's something required on our part. And I think the reason we don't want to do that, and the reason we don't want to seek out a healthy relationship with God and seek out a healthy relationship with other people, is because it's hard. And we'd rather just do the comfortable thing and just chill and just be like, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to look out for myself.
Yeah,
right?
I'd say that's where it lands. We want to be our own God.
Yeah, that's my point. Look at that.
But I mean, and so, we resist the devil because, sin is I mean, you look back at the garden, like it describes the fruit as something that was nourishing. Like Eve saw it and said it'd be good for food. Like, oh yeah, we're trying to compromise or make sin not look as bad to ourselves so that we can actually partake in it.
Yeah.
And then also it would make one wise. Like, yeah, I want to be like God. So sin promises some fun to us. It promises great things to us. But in the end, it results in death. In the end, it takes away from our life and takes us further from God. And that's why we're supposed to we resist and we draw near. And I use the illustration of like my sons, like I've got to hold their hands, keep them close to me because they're too ignorant to do what's right. And so I know if I let go, they're going to run around. They could get hit by a car. They could get into some trouble pulling things off the shelves and all this stuff. And I'll yell at them like, "Don't touch that!" Like, and make like I've got to command them to do these things. And similar to us, like we draw near to God because He loves us, right? I love my sons. I hold tight to their hands.
Yeah.
I know what's best for them, and I can tell them when they're close to me, "Hey, don't touch that." And so, God, in the same way, He loves us. He wants to protect us, and He speaks to us in a still small voice, right? And so that is, if we're further away from Him, it's hard for us to hear what He has to say.
Yeah.
And the closer we are to Him, the easier it is to hear, "Hey, that's not right. Don't do that."
Yeah.
I think that landed well with our students and them understanding what's going on, or what it means to draw near to God.
Yeah.
It's brought up like, we need to be reading God's word. Like that's where we hear the still small voice. We need to pray so that we're in communication with God. We can ask Him, "God, help me apply this to my life." And we've got to still be in community with each other at the church.
Yeah. It's I talk about kind of like the life of David and kind of going off what you were talking about, the life of David. And I told the high schoolers, I was like, man, the person of David in the Bible is one of my favorites. Like, I just relate a lot to him and just his struggles and everything that he went through. But you look at the life of David, like, and I told him, like, God calls him a man after His own heart, right? And you look at all these things that he did, right? He was an adulterer, he was a murderer, he's a liar, and all these decisions. Right? I'm sure, like, when he went out on that roof, right, and in the moment when he saw Bathsheba, right, made the decision to be disloyal and bring her into his chambers, right? He wasn't thinking about the future consequences. Right, he wasn't thinking about.
I was thinking about the promise of what could happen
sin,
now,
right? And then the now. And that's what sin promises is the now. We don't ever think about the later with it. We don't think about how, number one, it affects our relationship with God a lot of times, and number two, how it's going to hurt other people. And right, we see that play out in the next chapters in Samuel, right? Brings Bathsheba in, and then he affects this person who's a great man, Uriah the Hittite, right? Yeah. And he has him killed, right? It affects his whole relationship that he has within his kingdom.
It's something that I just thought of like one of the promises is, because I've had students say this and it breaks my heart. They're like, "Oh, this will help me relate better to people who struggle with this." Yeah. I'm like, no, stop. That is an awful lie to listen to, because all that does is cause issue in your relationship with God.
It may help you relate better to them, but it makes it harder for you to relate to God. Yeah, because you are bringing sin into your life. Yeah, and you are just I've heard that before, and I think, I'm being honest, I've used that excuse before in my own life, right? But you look at that going with the David thing, is the reason that he was called a man after God's own heart is despite the sin, despite the mess ups, and there was plenty that we read about, and not only is like David's like problems were written for everyone to read, like everyone knows about David's life now. But what we see also is he had going back to what you said, a humble heart. Right? So that's what made him a man after God's own heart. And James kind of talks about it, right? Is that when he recognized his sin, this is my point, the 3 steps of leaving away of how do we have a healthy relationship with God, was, man, he recognized his sin, right? And when he recognized his sin, he had a choice to either be okay with the sin or to not be okay with the sin and want to remove it from his life, right? And I think a lot of times that's where we mess up. If we recognize the sin in our life, or the sin in others' lives, who are really good at recognizing everyone else's sin, but we don't take the next step and take steps to remove it from our life. We just let it sit there and fester. And the third step is once you recognize and once you are heartbroken over the sin, as James talks about, you got to humble yourself and submit to God and ask for forgiveness. And that's exactly what David did in his life.
Yeah.
And he's the model of how we live in right relationship with people and God despite mess ups and failures.
Yeah. So that kind of leads into the last point that I made was purify your heart.
Yeah.
Right. And so I took Psalm 51:10. He says, create in me a clean heart, O God, renew a right spirit in me. And I've prayed that God would revive his spirit in me, help me to be sensitive to his spirit's movement in my life. But I don't think I've ever prayed, God, create me a clean heart, because the abundance of the heart overflows the mouth, right? And that's also includes our actions. And so like whatever's stored up in our heart is what is going to eventually come to light. And so we've got to seek God to purify our heart so that that those internal things that cause us to quarrel with one another won't show up.
Yeah.
So
We quarrel. We argue about dumb things sometimes as humans.
I really liked this week's teaching. I hope the students have really enjoyed it. I hope they got something out of it. But yeah, I thought this was a really good one, and we're really pushing unity. I mean, we've got several different schools represented in our student ministry, and so that also brings in another level of can't think of the word, adversity, I guess. Just trying to bring other people together and be unified. But cool. Any last remarks?
I was really hoping that I had like a Clash of Clans notification. My cannon is upgraded to level 20. I was gonna end with that, but since I don't, see y'all
See y'all next week.
week.